On again now, we're up to fees and charges, and that's on page 123. So who's speaking to fees and charges? Paul, are you speaking to fees and charges? Right, so 123 in the agenda from December, thanks. I think, councillors, this is set out in a fairly detailed form, and in fact the schedules are the absolute detail, and they are from pages 126 through to 170. So what I'm proposing to do is to ask for any questions on these. The staff are recommending some adjustments, and those will then be directed to the general managers. So are there any questions on the fees and charges recommended? Councillor Chesterman.
I just had the one question that I raised previously, and it was around a discounted dog fee for pensioners at a cost of $4,300. Is that now a lost cause, or can that be reintroduced and then councillors vote it up or vote it down?
Can I ask, can someone answer that, please? Where is it at? Right. So did you want to reintroduce it, did you?
Well, I thought I would have another go, Your Worship.
What's the process for that?
Well, normally once, well, it was within the same meeting, Your Worship,
Yeah.
so if the council was minded to, they could revisit that with a 75% majority.
To revisit or to change it?
To change it, to alter. Yeah.
Right, so it can be put on the table?
Yes, yes.
And it gets changed, not
Yes.
50% on 75%?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Excuse
good to
me,
know.
Your Worship.
Yes.
I think Brian was saying that this was considered a long time ago, not at this meeting, not at 9,
It was
10
considered
December.
in December,
Was it?
December meeting.
It was considered in
Was it?
9th and 10th.
I remember you bringing this up ages ago.
It takes a long journey, Councillor Mallett, to decision.
Long journey, long
You
and
know.
winding road.
You will know that, yes. Yes, all right, so you can revisit it and it can be tested. Are there any questions? Yes, Councillor McPherson.
It's on page 125.
You're not on, Councillor McPherson.
No, your microphone, mate.
It's page 125 on the list, but I think it's 127 electronically. So that's how you're going to it. Pensioner housing rents. The comment there is that because we're selling the lot, even though we haven't actually sold any yet, and we're not sure when exactly they would be sold, we're not going to go ahead with the incremental increases to cover maintenance or upgrades or anything. I'm questioning the wisdom of that. If it would seem to me that if we're going to sell them as going concerns, and most people around this table have said, well, we hope the pensioners can stay in them, or we expect that they'll be able to stay in them, it'll just be a new owner, it would be better, it seems to me, to continue with our gradual small regime of increases to keep up with costs, so they can be generally passed as a going concern, rather than passing over an asset to the purchaser with a bow wave of unmet needs.
So what was your question in relation to the fees and charges?
Well, this is in relation to the comments, which are not the actual charges. It's in relation to the philosophy behind council management not proposing any increases. So I'm particularly referring to that philosophy.
That, Blair, please.
Yes, so I think there's two parts. One is obviously the recommendation here was that until the outcome of the sale process is known, we are recommending an 11% increase, but that we defer that increase until we know the outcome of the sale process, which is the latter part of this year. In terms of the, I guess the REO process to the potential purchasers in the market, part of that documentation will explore the restrictions or otherwise on rental increases for the purchasers. And you'll recall the debate pre-Christmas where existing tenants, council wanted to make sure that those still were afforded, I guess, the similar tenancy term as what council provides for existing tenants, not for new
I
tenants.
think the question is more focused on the repairs and maintenance budgets, and that based on the comments on the last paragraph on page 125, which
Okay.
talks about our approach during the sale process.
So we are going to still maintain the properties for essential health and safety and repairs and maintenance. So we're not going to commence significant renewal projects, but any of those that are essential or urgent will be conducted during this period.
Yeah, that's only sidewise, partially my point. My point is that if you're selling these properties with unmet upgrade needs or maintenance, whichever it is, because it's not defined or quantified in here for us, it's just a general comment, then you could be, there's a risk that it could be setting up the current tenants for a big jump in fees for a new purchaser, even if they are a community purchaser, without that gradual increase. It'll be a step increase.
I think he gets that.
Yes.
So the staff are recommending a program of repairs and maintenance in the budget, but not any major capital improvements.
Until we know the outcome of the sale process.
Right, okay, so that's the answer to the approach on that, and if you're not happy with the approach, you can...
Well,
something
Your
on the
Worship,
table.
I thank you for interpreting my questions, but you haven't actually interpreted them correctly. And if
Okay, well, maybe if you make them clearer, because what I want is the General Manager to understand exactly what you're saying, ask the question, and him to actually answer
Okay,
it
we'll
with-
go back to square one then.
Go for it.
Thank you, Your Worship. Square one, some years ago, a council with you involved, I believe, Blair, council management proposed to councillors, rather than the occasional increases that took place with pensioner housing every 3 years or so when we set these sort of fees and charges, there should be an incremental increase so there were no steps too great for people to be able to manage, the tenants to be able to manage. You are now proposing that philosophy that we've been following for some years now not be followed in the period between now and when we sell the places. Now, A, we're not certain of the sales because we haven't found the willing buyer yet. And B, we don't, even if we do find the willing buyers, we don't know how long that's going to take.
So what's your
So-
question on this point?
Well, I want to debate the philosophy that staff have put there.
Okay, so if you've
So
got
how do I do that? Because I'm not talking about, there's no facts and figures here to enable us to say, well, you've set aside the correct amount or
So
not.
you are wanting to put forward an alternate approach on the fees and charges in terms of rental?
The
are you?
approach that
Yep.
that's correct, Your Worship. The approach that I'm asking staff to consider what
Yep.
the fees and charges would be if they continued the previous approach until the points of sale.
Right, well, you've said in the report here that you would be recommending 11% increase in the rent. What is that 11% generally across the board? Because I think Councillor McPherson is saying we don't actually have any information what that means.
Well, we do, Your Worship. They are itemised. I just need to find the page number, the specific changes.
So show
Now,
us
I
there.
think if I can just
What page
support,
is it, so we can have a look?
what is the revenue opportunity lost? I think what Councillor McPherson was asking.
Page,
so what
page,
page is-
page 149.
149. Okay. What is it on the electronic, please?
I think
Wait just a moment. On the electronic, we're
It would be
two
two
pages
pages
behind?
further on.
3 page. Right, 152 on the electronic, 149 in the hard copy. So there's the rental under point 15. Okay. And you're recommending not to take that up?
we're recommending that we would take that up, but only after we know the outcome of the sale process. So it's deferring that by approximately 5 months from a 1 July start towards the end of the year. So the policy, the council policy talks about that we attain a 100% cost recovery ratio, but that we also review our event rents annually, and they would be benchmarked in line with other comparable providers of social housing in the local government sector. In this instance, obviously, we recognise that there is a slightly larger movement required because we are having to attain the cost recovery of 100%. And I guess the second part of your question, Councillor McPherson, was around the assurance to tenants in terms of sale process. Are they going to face potentially some significant increases by purchases if we deferred maintenance, if I understood your question correctly?
Well, that's the potential outcome, because we don't know what a new owner might regard as essential. I think they may have different policies from us.
Sure, and I guess as part of our disclosure, we're very open and very transparent on all the conditions of all the properties. It is the view of the staff that the properties, there's no significant or urgent large maintenance required in this immediate period. As if through any asset management plan, there are large upgrades required over the course of the 10-year plan, but nothing of significance in the next 6 to 12 months.
So my question, another question then is not the decision that council has made to sell them to a certain type of purchaser, provided that type of purchaser is available, willing to buy them, and therefore an implication potentially that some or all even may not be sold?
There's a possibility that some may not be sold, or it's entirely dependent on the offers that we receive. And as part of that process, you'll recall that existing tenants are given rights as part of the resolution, and obviously those where there aren't existing tenants, that there are less requirements on those particular properties. And as part of those obligations for the purchases on existing tenants, we are including similar content to our current policy in terms of rental increases being reflecting similar principles to our policy. So they just can't go out, and there was a conversation of council, can't go out and dramatically increase rentals, the net cost of rentals to existing tenants upon sale. So we are trying to give that same assurance to our current tenants to allay your fears that a new purchaser isn't going to come in and, for existing tenants, put the rents up dramatically on some basis.
Right. So if, Councillor McPherson, you want to have a particular motion on the issue, when I call for motion. Okay. Right. Any other questions on? Yes.
Just a question I'm not sure was answered by Blair. Why are we delaying the rental increase from June until the supposed sale date? To me, it seems strange that it wouldn't be business as usual and that we would put the regular increases up on the regular dates.
We are conscious, councillors, that our likely costs over the next early few months of the new financial year will be lower, because we are obviously we're restricting our spending on essential health and safety and repairs and maintenance, and so therefore our revenue required to cover those costs is slightly less. Hence the reason we can defer the increase. However, it's entirely appropriate for council, if they choose to put that rental up from 1 July, that they can do so.
So if we're only going with essential maintenance and works as opposed to upgrades, surely there is some extra cost, and if we're aiming for the 100%, there's some extra cost even if we leave aside the upgrades, and if so, what's the quantum of that? Is it's maybe not 11%, but is it somewhere in between the 0 you're proposing as an interim step and the 11?
Our assessment is that by maintaining the current rental levels for that 4 to 5 month period, we can cover the likely costs that we will face. Yes,
so that will be 100% cost recovery for the 4 or 5 months.
That's our plan.
I thought we were already behind the 100%. From the figures you've given us in the past.
It fluctuates, and it's a mixture of occupancy levels, makeup of tenants. So we're confident we will be very close to 100%.
So you're basically saying if we had say a $2 million block of units, that the likely upgrade costs in the next year that you would need to recover from tenants would be $220,000, 11% of that. Because that's what you'd be collecting by an 11% increase.
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that the operating costs, which includes depreciation and repairs and maintenance, not renewals, we believe that the current rental profile for the early part of the financial year will meet those operating costs. We do believe an 11% increase is required if we return to the full program, as outlined in the budgets, but we're comfortable that we're in a...
The full program
Yeah, so picking up
Gerard,
that-
is at 11%, and a $2 million
Yeah, okay, thank-
block is about the size of some of our
Councillor
blocks.
McPherson, I think you made the point clear, what you're trying to, what you're saying. A better question-
Sorry, Your Worship, there is one point, though. I've asked a question which I can't get an answer.
And that is?
And that is there any cost increase needed to, A, get to 100%, first component, B, to cover essential maintenance and upgrades? Because we've been
Yeah.
told we're not at 100%
Right.
now.
What's the answer to those questions, please, Blair?
There is a cost increase, and the major driver of that is depreciation. And so the depreciation figures are large in terms of the housing activity in the new financial year. But we believe that we can offset that by reducing our other operating costs in the interim period by a lower amount of operating and repairs and maintenance. We're also one staff member down, and we're not proposing to replace that staff member in the period up to the sale process. So we believe we can cover those increased depreciation costs if as the outcome of the sale process is once it's known, and we do still have some properties or the entire portfolio, we will need to move back to the full budget as contained in the pack, and we would need to increase the revenue by
So following on from that then, if we implement a recommended increase from day one, then in response to the policy, you would be able to implement the usual program
That's correct.
that we follow.
That is correct.
Right, thank you.
And just to clarify, that's for Councillor McPherson. He asked what the impact would be. The total annual revenue is $2,021,000. This would be 5 months of that, and 11% would add up to $92,000.
So that's
11% of 2 million,
$2,021,000
11% of that,
over 5 months.
over 5 months, sorry,
Yep.
yeah, correct.
Thank you. Okay,
Sorry.
any other questions on fees and charges? Councillor Mount.
Yeah, on the same issue, why are we treating the pensioner housing any different just because they're for sale?
Why are they recommending
Yeah.
we do?
I think I've probably covered that already. We believe that if council was so minded, it could delay the rental increase until we have certainty in the sale process. We believe we're going to have lower costs for those early part of the financial year, which we will be able to cover.
So if we weren't going to sell them, you would still be recommending this?
Yes, I would. And our recommendation is an 11% increase. What staff are advising council is that you have and our recommendation is that you can defer that increase until the sale process outcome is known. But our recommendation is that if we retained the portfolio and we didn't sell any at the end of that process, or only sold part of them, we would need an 11% increase in the rents for those remaining properties.
But you said depreciation cost is increasing, so you're going to make up for that by reducing your normal, I think what I heard you say, is reducing your normal repairs and maintenance work to just that which is essential effectively.
That's correct, and we're also we're also one staff member down on the
Yeah,
housing.
so
team.
what?
So
I mean-
those
Yes,
cost
let me
savings,
finish.
those cost savings, we believe, will allow us to mitigate the increased depreciation costs and effectively offset the revenue we won't gain. So the CFO's talked about approximately $90,000. We believe we can save that $90,000 in those first 5-month period to keep us at 100% cost recoverable. But beyond there, we would need to increase the rentals depending on where we get to at the sale.
But when you do that, don't you then reduce the value of the properties because your yield from the properties drops?
Well, I think that's...
Well, it does.
Yes, it does, but
Yes.
at the same time, they're going to be looking and valuing the properties into the future based on their potential revenue stream and whether they have existing tenants or no existing tenants, what the requirements are that we would place on them in terms of the rental increases for existing tenants. So that's a different exercise.
Yeah, and in terms of trying to give the tenants in these places some degree of certainty, what were they expecting? What indications have they had that?
We have not given them any indication pending the discussion here.
So if we weren't selling the houses, would you be recommending an 11% rent increase?
Yes.
That was a question I asked before. I think it's been asked twice.
And I think the second part is we have a rental increase every year as per our policy. We review the rentals and they would increase every year based on the benchmarking.
And the 11% would arrive at 100% cost recovery.
That's correct, and I think the CFO's confirmed that as well.
Yeah.
So I still don't get the reason why you're not,
I think,
it should
Councillor
be
Mallard,
just business as usual.
I think a number of us are thinking that, so when we come to the resolution, we can change the recommendation. Some Deputy.
Yes, thank you, Worship. Look, I've got some sympathy with the points that Councillor McPherson has made. This, I thought, was an argument about market rents. And generally, the
No,
pensioner housing is 70% of the market rent. In Hamilton, I understand it's 62.5%. So
No, within our policy says that we benchmark every year. We look at the rentals across the local government sector for this sort of housing,
Right.
and we then fix it.
and you've made a very good point for me.
And the
because
staff
when
recommend a
I was
change.
coming to that point, that there is no certainty around the sale, and I think that we should progress on a business as usual basis.
Yep.
So
what's-
there would have been a rental increase on the 1st of
Yeah,
whatever
so
month was going to
I
be.
guess the point I'm making is this is a question time. I think if you're into the value or not of doing that, we'll save that for the motion. So have you got a question? No. Any other questions on the fees and charges? Any fees and charges? No. You've got a question on the fees and charges?
Thank you, Councillor.
What ward did you stand in, Brian? How many votes did you get, mate?
Page 130, there's been a little bit of a breakdown there. Tables and chairs caused a bit of drama in the
$60.
past. Don't want any drama in the future, and suggesting we leave that fee as it is. We can cover the management requirements around tables and chairs, so if we just leave that fee as it currently is, I think that's a good change to make.
Councillor O'Leary? Question, Councillor O'Leary?
Councillor Crowe stole my thunder there. I was going to suggest the same thing. And also because we are reviewing the public places policy as well.
Yeah, true. Right, if there's no other questions, if you go to page 123, I'm going to move a recommendation that picks up 1. In respect of 2, it's removed. And I'm just checking, Blair, by removal means it will be implemented along with all the other fees and charges, the usual increase, right? And number 3, that they're approved subject to no increase on tables and chairs on footpath, page 130. I got a seconder on that?
I'll second it.
Councillor O'Leary seconding that. So if you could just pop that up on the screen so we're clear. So just briefly, by way of explanation, by removing 2 in the recommendation, what I'm saying is that it's my view that we just implement the normal increase, because of the nature of the policy and the way the policy is structured, that will require then the staff just to look at the program of work, because the policy contains how we sort of manage it. Question, Councillor McPherson?
Sorry, not in relation to what you just said, but
Yeah.
in relation to an item.
Right.
Or a group of items into the part. Sorry.
Right, what page?
Which is 136 and 7, and 136 and 7. There's a number
on
of...
your electronic, so we're ahead of that then, are we?
Yeah, no, that's the actual listed page number.
Oh, yes, okay.
There's a number of very large increases. It says because of an error in last year's budget, which I can appreciate the error, but it seems a very strange error, because that they're all because charges for groups of rooms were less than for single components of those. Is how did that error get made, and have we checked them all for that? Because a lot of these community area sector fees and charges are very historical.
It's been an ongoing staff era, to be honest. So now that new staff have come in there, they've been through, Jen's gone through everything with the new community facilities team, reviewed all our fees and charges, the management of the community facilities, So it's been ongoing for a while. But when you look at it, it has been a bit of a nonsense. So we're just rectifying that. We don't think it's going to cause any major grief or anything like that. So yes, it's been an oversight. It should have been picked up before this, but unfortunately it hasn't, and now we're rectifying it.
Okay, thanks. And another question in the community area. In one particular facility, we have actually reduced charges to bring that facility's charges in line with comparable, I presume, outside non-council facilities. Is that something which I think is a good thing to do, but is that something that's been checked with our other facilities, our halls and that? Are we?
Yeah. So same scenario. Jen and Dee's team have been going through all of that, doing the benchmarking, that sort of thing. We found that our charges are a little bit high on the national benchmarking scale, so we've just reduced those in line with what's best practice across New Zealand. We don't think it's going to affect the budget majorly or anything like that. So we're confident now that we've got a good robust set of benchmark figures right across our facilities.
Thanks.
Okay. Right, councillor, so just very briefly with the motion, I just explained before that it's my view that we just carry on business as usual with the pensioner housing as we work through the process. I think certainty is pretty important for the tenants, but also important as we manage the sale. And I think the policy will give the parameters about how we, the 100% recovery and the repairs and maintenance that follow as a result of that. And that's it, really. Another question? Yep.
To staff as a result, if this resolution with your amended part gets passed, will that mean that staff, and I'm just going to check this with the management, that they will then, for instance, employ any necessary staff rather than holding off on that, will if there are upgrades that can be sensibly done within the time that they will happen when we say business as usual?
Well, that's my intention, Blair, just as a result of implementing the recommended increase on the rentals for the pensioner housing, as you heard me say before, just business as usual as we carry on through that process. Councillor McPherson's question is then, given that, you will just carry on managing that as usual now? Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, councillor.
Just understanding of, and I may have a deficiency here in understanding English, that theatre fees and charges remain unpublished. Now, what does that mean?
Sean, that's for competitive advantage, is it not?
That's correct, Your Worship. The thing to remember is the fees that we do have set are known fees that you see on the table in front of you, but quite often we do get into a negotiating situation depending on the scale of the event and so forth, so they are used as benchmarks.
Yes, councillor Mallett?
Just further to that, then, the process we go through now, which is council approving fees, do you have some sort of authority to negotiate an unapproved fee?
Through Your Worship, yes, I do have an authority to negotiate a package price, if you like, for a hire at the venue within my delegated authority. However, it is like a lot of our other venues, it's a risk and reward type approach that we have, depending on the nature of the event, the nature of the opportunity that we have, depending on the size and the scale and so forth. But we generally use the rates that you see here in this as minimum benchmark.
So in terms of governance, when does the governing body, when are they advised of these renegotiated fees and package deals and whatnot come to us?
The specific contracts don't specifically come to you directly. You certainly see the results of our financial performance, if you like, against our budgeted rates and so forth. They are subject to audit, of course, both internal and external audit and so forth at any stage. In fact, I've just had a discussion with the next round for internal audit with PricewaterhouseCoopers yesterday, and that's on the agenda for the next audit in the next couple of months.
To my point of view, that's quite concerning. One of the key issues for any governance body is that they understand its streams of revenues and whatnot. We're talking significant assets, Claudelands, rugby stadiums, founders theatres, etc., I assume. I think there needs to be some degree of transparency, certainly at least to us, if not maybe the general public, if you're trying to keep things commercially sensitive.
Well, the agreements and the contracts that we do have in place in the various venues are commercially sensitive, and usually they are so as not to disadvantage our future negotiations on other rates and so forth, and also the other party that we are dealing with. At times they quite often require confidentiality as well, but I can assure you we have good checks and balances in place through our delegations authority, through the reviews that are available, through the contract documents and so forth that we have. So there is a good track process in place.
So when do those things come to us?
They don't specifically come to this,
No.
to full council, but they do come to you in the form of the consolidated result of the operation as per the budgets.
So Councillor Mallard, if it's an issue that, it's a governance issue you're raising, can I suggest that we won't debate that here?
When do you debate it then? Isn't this exactly the time you do debate those things?
No, what I was going to say to you, let me finish instead of interrupting me midstream, is why don't you add that as a point to raise with the CE when we're talking about the kinds of governance reporting that we want? Because as you know, we are going through a review of the way the reports are constructed and what we have in those reports, because you've participated in those, and particularly the finance team, you guys are going through what sort of information you want in your finance committee and in what form. So why don't you raise it there and have a discussion with the CFO and the CE as part of that process? Okay, and I'm going to write it on my list as well. All right, any other questions on this? Yes.
Just looking at that, the theatre fees and charges to remain unpublished, and this is the public document, right? So on page 124, 125, we have Clarence Street and we have Founders Theatre. All the fees and charges are there.
Yes, so
how could you
the General Manager will answer that.
Yes, Your Worship. Look, to be clear, I actually am not quite sure what that sentence is myself. I have what is published here in the draft fees and charges is quite acceptable for me to be published. In fact, as I indicated before, we use those as a benchmark and sets the expectations when we do enter into a negotiated basis, so I'm comfortable.
We don't need that statement.
No.
Okay. Right, thanks. Yes, Councillor McPherson.
Your Worship, I had a couple of questions on page 148 relating to the library first, then the zoo.
Yep.
And right in the middle of page 148, there's a reservation same-day hold fee reduction of 40% because our increase didn't work. That's what it says in a nutshell. We were presented by management extensive costings as to what was needed to be done to get some more revenue.
Sorry, Councillor McPherson, which page are you
I was
looking
148, Your Worship. Sorry,
148, whereabouts, under zoo?
No, library.
Library, oh yes, yeah.
The reservations relate to books, not animals, Your Worship.
Yeah, that's right.
The
Good point, yeah.
40% reduction seems to me to be a stab in the dark attempt to recoup the level of service that we provided in the past, or return to it, with as little science perhaps as there was in the proposed increase.
Right.
Sure, through you to the manager, and I'm just wondering what basis they've got for saying a 40% increase, reduction will be any more successful than the 100 and whatever percent increase we put in the first place.
Yes.
And the same for that 92% increase from more or less $5 to $10 for the interloan charge, whether that's going to have a similar effect. I mean, we really do, because these round figures seem to be stabbing in the dark.
I think we've got your question clear. So, Lance, could you answer that, please?
I'll tackle the interloans first. That's to cover costs. So that's what there's actually a higher cost than what we're charging for that to happen between libraries and that sort of thing. So we don't think that's going to have a major effect on people wanting to do that. Normally, if people want an interloan, it's normally a specific book for a specific reason. So from my intel from Sue is that people are prepared to pay that. The other one...
$10 round figure for an actual cost. It seems like, if it's the cost is $9.87 or something, then we tend to round figures and that sort of thing, just so that people know it's $10 or $5 or something like that. So that would be $10 for someone from Huntly to borrow one book or 50 books for a year?
It's normally us getting a book from somewhere else, so,
Yeah,
It's bringing the book in.
Yeah, I understand.
Yes.
yeah. And
So
sometimes
what's-
we get them from Auckland Library or
Okay.
Christchurch or whatever. It could
All right.
be, a specific scientific book or something like that, a resource book. The other one, yes, and there's been numerous agenda items around the library. It was mainly around fines, which had a significant effect on. Well, it had a good and bad effect that we had more people being less naughty, not bringing books back, but it also affected our budget. So, and that's always the conundrum when you're looking at revenue from fines. So that's always, there's always a plus side and a minus side to that, financially and non-financially. This here is around reservations for reserving books. Essentially what we're saying is we've put it up too high. What it's done is actually stopped a lot of people actually, turned them off actually reserving a book. And we're believing, Sue's saying that we should bring it back to a little bit above what we used to have it at two to 3 years ago when we discussed it as a council. We believe that will encourage more people to do that. Now, she's done that in consultation, talking to various users and also with the friends as well. So, yes, the science around it, a little bit of a stab in the dark. We're looking like, that's sort of our revenue from that's decreased by about $7,000 or $8,000 just over the last 12 months. What we're trying to do is arrest that, encourage people to actually reserve those books again. So we will be monitoring that. Is it an exact science? No, but we're believing that, this is something that we should look at to encourage people to use that service going forward.
maybe drew from pensioner housing a while ago, big increases or changes in fees can have unintended consequences, whereas incremental ones are much easier to manage and measure the effect of.
That's correct, and I think from those previous agenda items that we've shown with looking at what's happened in other places, there hasn't been a hard and fast in fees. Dunedin, it's been a bit different to Tauranga or whatever. So I think each community's got its own nuances.
Right, Councillor Mount, you have a question?
I-
Oh, did you have another one?
Sorry, I had another one on the zoo, if I could.
Right, Zoo? Yeah.
Just those increases at the bottom of page 148 and on to 149 are fairly steep, and we've had my concern is that we've had increases for quite a number of years. Doesn't give us any history of the increases other than the previous year, just a comparison between now. I'm wondering whether there's been any measurement done of the impact of charges continuing to go up at much higher than inflation. Whether there's consumer resistance starting to come in. Actually, the same goes for the pool, I might add, in previous years. So
Right,
there's
would
a
you
little bit
answer
of
that?
concern there.
Sean, please?
Yes, through your worship, I think you raise a very good point in terms of consumer resistance or customer resistance, and it is something that we do monitor quite closely, and you'll see some of the fees in there we haven't proposed an increase because we have had resistance on certain products and so forth. Yes, the admissions to Hamilton Zoo have gone up steadily over the recent years, whether it's been $1 per adult, $2 per adult and so forth. However, we are benchmarking those fees against other
Sorry, Sean.
like
Did you say the
zoos.
admission prices or the admission the number of
No,
people?
the admission price
beg your
per adult. So we have benchmarked those against other similar facilities around the country, such as the Auckland Zoo or Arana Park in Christchurch, Wellington Zoo and so forth. And we are still on the light side of what they are charging. However, we do know that they are facing customer resistance when they get up above that $25, $26 mark. So at the moment, yes, it is a steep increase, but we do believe we're within that safety zone. But it's something we always monitor quite closely.
Right, so it'll be quite important then to monitor that as we go through the financial year, if this goes through, just to see how that goes, yeah.
So the question that follows that is you've got an increase for adults because you want to cover the costs of another staff member, and then you've increased everything else under it because you want to keep the relativity the same. I'm not sure that the rationale is that useful to us there. Maybe they all contribute to the cost of the extra staff member, and we need the staff member. I guess I don't see a business case here. I'm just saying we want other staff members, so we'll put up the fees. And I know that the zoo is designed to attract kids, and we're putting up the fees as fast there as for everyone else. I can see some different justifications, if you like, for extra charges for adults
So the
as
question
opposed to
is,
kids.
the question is why...
Have they considered keeping the kids one low, as opposed to the others?
Yes, through your worship, once again a good point, and yes, we had considered that, but we do believe that the threshold is still fair and reasonable. On the mention about the increased income covering the cost of the veterinary nurse and so forth, perhaps that probably is a bit misleading. Yes, it is where the new revenue will go to help us there, because we run a fairly lean ship, but that's not the sole reason for it. We have other increased costs that we are bearing within the existing expenditure budgets in any case. So probably maybe we shouldn't have used that as an explanation, but we did want to give you assurances that the increased revenue is going somewhere for a good purpose.
Your Worship, as a follow-up question, could I ask, not in relation to this meeting or anything, but for information from management as to the costs of admission to the zoo over the last 10 years in this range here?
Yeah, that's fine. Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Mallard?
Thank you. Just my questions regarding the libraries. You've got all your fees there, but you don't. The new services you're providing at the libraries, Lance, the sewing machine hire, tools, drills, weed whackers, etc., etc. Where are those fees?
It's under kit sets.
So what page is that?
It's on that page. We should read your libraries.
$1.50 or something.
So it's 50 cents, is it? Kit set collections is 50 cents.
Yeah, that's my understanding, but I'll check that. Helen, do you...
So what is encompassed in kit sets?
I'll have to find out, to be honest. I don't know all the details, so I'll find out for you.
So, sorry, there's two lots. There's kit set collections. Oh, there's two kit set collections. One for $1 and one for 50 cents.
One's a new service.
They both say new. So there's two that say kit sets. One is two, and it both says the same thing: new service, new service. One's 50 cents, one's $1.
Yeah, I'll get Helen to check that for you. So
Okay. How is that going? That service?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I think the uptake's probably, from what I gathered from Sue a few weeks back, that there's been some use of it. It wouldn't be our most extensive service, though.
Not your most extensive service?
No.
Okay. What are the things that make up the kit set? Do you know?
Look, I'd have to find out. I'm not all over the detail of all of the programs. So, but just bearing in mind that there's quite a range of different things we do at the libraries. It's not just about booking out books and things like that. It's about, it's actually encouraging literacy, encouraging a whole bunch of things, getting people in their community hub, that sort of thing. So our development team actually work on a series of programs which are obviously related to literacy and that sort of thing in education as we work through our strategic plan and outlined in that. So, it's a little bit wider. So, but those generally are, not a significant part of the library service.
The press release, which was 2 or 3 months ago, and I can't, memory's not so flash, but it was sewing machines,
So I think Councillor
tools.
Mallard, what the general...
Yeah, I'm just asking a question.
Yeah,
tools,
he said he was going
drills.
to get you the detail.
Yeah, I'll have to
of what
get you
it
the
makes
detail. I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
So.
Just in a sort of more governance type thing, what authority, under what authority did this service come under? Was this out of the library review? This wasn't a consequence of the library's review, was it?
Well, we always look at doing things differently and trying different things. It's part of innovation from staff. Obviously, we do that within a parameter of a budget and the resourcing we've got. If there's anything that's not being uptaken by the community, then we'd obviously look at removing that, and it's just about trying different things. Society moves on, people's needs move on, and we try and move with the times as well.
Do you know the CapEx that was involved in this? Presumably you
Not
had to
off the
buy
top of my
some
head, I'd have to
kit.
find out, yeah. It'd be reasonably minimal because their budgets are very minimal.
Okay, thank you.
Any others? Okay, can you remove the first line, please, and we're going to vote on the motion? First line thing. Right, that's a motion, and it was seconded by Councillor O'Leary. Right, is there any debate on this? No? Okay, we're going to vote on the board.
Carried, 11 votes for and 1 against.
A couple of bits of information will come back during the meeting if possible, thanks. Okay, councillors, we're now on to the unfunded projects. So these are contained in the supplementary papers and also in your main agenda item. Page 171 is the page number for the unfunded proposal reports. And then on page 13, you have a spreadsheet, 13 in the supplementary paper and 171. So we'll take them in the order that they appear on the A3, page 13 supplementary report. And we'll take them one at a time. And we'll ask the general managers to address each of their reports. So the first item is Founders Theatre.
Worship, if I
Yeah.
may, it may be helpful for councillors to receive a copy of the revised
Great,
figures.
they can just be handed out. Yep. Right, we're on to Founders Theatre. Thanks. I'll hand them out.
Thank you, Your Worship. Would you like
But just
me
on the
to
page,
go-
I just want to check on the page number of the actual report and the agenda.
Page 177.
Okay, 177, thank you. Right, thank you. Yes, up here, I think.
One more?
Did you need to do any reading on this, Paul, in terms of the structure of that A3 sheet, or not? Did you want to do, say, the order that you put them in? Yes. Yeah. So, Sean, before we
excuse
start,
me, Worship.
Sean, yeah, just a minute. Before we start, Sean, sorry, the CFO just wanted to just do a bit of an introduction because they produced this spreadsheet out of the reports, and there's a sort of an order, and I think he just needs to do some context setting. Councillor Mallett, did you have a question?
Yeah, just how does, so we got this in the supplementary,
That's correct.
and we had this in the big meeting, which we never got to addressing.
That's right.
Is this just exactly the same
No,
information?
that's what he's going to do.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So, councillors, thank you, and thank you, Your Worship. Just quickly reminding councillors that we did have, as Councillor Mallett just referred to, a number of proposals in the original papers in December. Over the Christmas New Year period, as we were also retesting the budgets, we also looked at whether or not we could in fact make room in the later years for some of the unfunded activities as another option for council, and that's where the amended schedule on page 13 comes from. So if you have a look across that, there is a recommendation. That is an updated recommendation based on some modelling that we've done over the Christmas New Year period. We also cross-reference in the second column to the original budget pack so that you know where to find the original proposal. There's some additional comments there that just help with that. And then we are looking at the impact that this proposal would make on the draft budget, having selected that as the option for today. So from that's the first of the 3 columns around the options that were indicated there. We also have, to my left here, you can see the impact, because this considers them in isolation, and therefore we need, as we go through, to make sure that we are not exceeding any limits by combining these items.
So just so for clarity, the first column draft budget is what we're looking at in terms of impact. So if I look down that list, if we do resolved to do items 1, 2, 3 and 4, there's no impact.
If they're taken in isolation, there is no impact, and in all likelihood, if we put all of them together, there will be no impact, but we do need to check that as we go, just to make sure.
But you must have run those and checked those already,
We've
based
run,
on the
we've run-
recommendations?
we have run them in isolation, but we have, because the combinations quickly add up to more than 3,000 or 4,000 models to run, we have not been able to run all of them together.
Right, okay. So these are ordered in, these are ordered,
Yes,
I'm
so
assuming, because it's a different order to the December order, so,
that's correct. The leadership team also reviewed the order, and there is, in paragraph 6.2, talks about the priority that was applied to these, so that we could actually come up with an order that was more sensible than
so it's
the one we had.
paragraph 6.2 in the supplementary paper?
In the supplementary paper,
That
yes.
tells us the criteria you've overlaid to order them, so ranking them in the staff's view, the most important to do, is that?
That's correct.
If we were going to do them, okay, all right. Based on that criteria.
Paul, one of the criteria is project generates additional growth yield. What's that mean?
Some projects actually have a yield in relation to development contributions as well.
Oh, okay.
Where that is occurring, that's been factored into
Okay,
that.
so if we build a road, we can open up some sections which can give us DCs and rates and that sort of stuff. Okay.
That's correct. And a very similar prioritisation was also used for prioritisation around removing items too.
Okay, thank you.
Right, okay, Founders Theatre.
Thank you, Your Worship. Elected members will recall that over the last couple of years and even beyond, that we have been going through a fairly exhaustive review of the council-owned and operated theatre facilities, and the outcome of that review, for the context of this discussion on Founders Theatre, first of all was that we needed to rationalise the number of theatres that council owned and operated, and we've done that through the exit of the Meteor Theatre, and we're about to do that with an exit plan for Clarence Street Theatre, which was resolved to happen late last year. The other big issue that came out of the theatre's review was the future of Founders Theatre itself. First up, the Founders Theatre has had a declining level of patronage, which is reported in some detail in the paper that you received here. And second up, we have also been aware that the theatre itself has been suffering, and with customer feedback and so forth, from perhaps a just-in-time or a sort of fairly minimal maintenance regime over a prolonged number of years during its history. As a part of the condition of Founders Theatre, as a part of the 30-year asset management program that we undertook, we did some investigations, once again, that were known to us, but it was a matter of validating and also understanding timings that really suggested to us that the safe life of the fly tower operation above the stage, or the flying system that's above the stage, is coming close to an end. In early 2014, we had a report prepared by a specialist firm to look at the state of the fly tower. They recommended to us some immediate remedial action in order to enable us to continue to operate for a further 2 years, which takes us into 2016. We undertook that remedial action within our existing budgets, and that has enabled the safety of the operation to continue. However, the report was very clear that beyond towards the end of 2016, that system would be unable to continue to accommodate the sorts of loads and so forth that are required of our customers for putting staged events there. And I'm talking about events such as the Phantom of the Opera or Mamma Mia and so forth that require a lot of prop services. So the other element that's come into it is a degree of uncertainty we have over the strength of the stage house itself, which sits over the stage and which actually holds the flying system that the theatre uses, and we need to do further work to investigate the strength of that fly tower, especially if we were to consider upgrading the flying system to bring it up to speed in today's world and on today's standard that's required. So it's been a difficult journey that we've had with assessing where to next with Founders Theatre, as you've read in the report. We have identified that we believe there is substantial work that will need to be done there that will come at a substantial cost to council. We had originally looked at timing for remedial action if council chose to do so to be pretty soon after the useful life of the fly tower as it currently stands takes us out towards the end of 2016. However, it's also quite clear that we do need more work to be done so that we've got a much clearer picture on some of the elements that are in place. And to be transparent with you, I have struggled to find money and actually want to spend the sort of money we need to spend without having a clear indication of council's appetite for upgrading the theatre to make it to get it to performance level. The key issue for us moving forward is, as I said before, we have taken some remedial action to make the fly tower safe. That has a limited life, and the theatre can continue to operate beyond 2016, but we will be in a position where we will have to start reducing or turning down some business opportunity for the theatre or events to take place there simply because of the load capacity for the flying system and potentially the stage house. So to give you an example, we currently have 3 booking requests for some major shows coming up in 2016 and 2017, and our team, our technical support team, are actually doing calculations to see if we can do the load. Now, one of those we can do, definitely. One of those we'll probably be turning down because of concerns over the carrying capacity. So we do have an issue moving forward. I would want to stress that the theatre can continue to operate with the challenges we have on the fly tower, but it will be at a reduced operating standard and certainly reduced type of activity that can take place there. And the major activities that are restricted or will become restricted are those that require heavy load carriage for lighting, sound systems, but also stage props, curtaining and so forth. So I think hopefully you've had a chance to look at the paper and that is clear for you, but I'm happy to take any questions on the paper. The revised recommendation that is on the A3 sheets sit well with me, although we had originally put in an earlier time frame. This is an expensive item. It is an item where we are required to judge as to the need of the theatre facility going forward for the city. But I'm also confident that if we are given more time and some resource to actually do further investigations, that we'll have a much clearer picture to bring for a final proposal to this council. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Councillor Forsyth?
Thank you, Sean. You may have answered my question in part with your last comments. So the estimated cost of the upgrade to the fly tower, stage house and the toilets, foyer toilets, at 10.8, is that the gold-plated version or the...
There's no gold-plated version. The paper indicates there's 2 sort of components. One is the remedial action for the fly tower and the stage house and so forth to be done, which is the bulk of the cost, around 10.8. The additional amount, which is 3-something million, that is really taking the opportunity to look at doing some basic cosmetic and clean-up activity in the public areas and the public zones. The seats, for example, were replaced around 25 years ago. We're not looking to replace the seats in the auditorium area. We're looking at certainly refurbishing them in terms of new upholstery and so forth, but there's no gold-plated here. But certainly bringing some parts of the public areas up to grade if we're to do the other work.
So in that second point, you just moved on to that. So in answer to my question then, no, the fly tower is the bare minimum at 10.8?
Correct. The fly tower and the stage house. If the stage house needs to be rebuilt so that it's safe and can carry the loads that are required, that's where that's the bare minimum.
So when you previously talked about, well, if you gather some more information and do more of a feasibility study or whatever, get down to the more detail, you're saying you've already done that and that 10.8's it?
Well, that's the assessment that we've had from our advisors on it, but what we haven't had, which may be come up with a better result than what we're talking about, is if we do get evidence that the stage house itself can hold the loads. If we get evidence on that, it could be a better outcome, but we need to have proper assessments done on that, on the structural stability of the stage house.
And just a couple of questions further. So point 2 then, the upgrades to the auditorium. So what you're saying that the foyer area, etc., are currently not meeting higher requirements. Can you put some more detail, and customer expectations? Could you put more detail around that, please?
Yes, certainly. We get complaints from customers, both hirers and people who attend performances, basically of the general state of the public areas, and also the convenience of the sort of layout. If you're there on a full night, it gets quite awkward in terms of getting in and out of the various hospitality zones. Also, we don't have any spaces that are all that suitable for sort of corporate hosting type activity, which is sometimes a requirement of some of our clients and so forth. So it's a matter of customer feedback, but it's not it's not a big part of this project. It's certainly just taking the opportunity to do some upgrade work. The other work that is included that is inside the theatre house itself, where the seating areas are, and it's an item that came up in the theatres review, was the configuration of how the seating is done, and it's basically a 1,200 seat theatre, but there are some theatrical performances and so forth that actually will only warrant smaller, more intimate crowds, you know, sort of around the 400 or 500, and so there is some provision in there in the budget that allows us to provide some separation panelling so that we can have the slightly more intimate audience area within the theatre itself.
So the 10.8 is the must-do, and the 3, and that's the smaller component,
yes,
is the not so critical
correct.
part.
Correct, but it is it's certainly an element in terms of a decision we have to make, or choice we have to make with regards to customer satisfaction with the venue and ability to attract new client streams.
And so when you say customer satisfaction, you mean the people sitting down watching the show, or the people actually using it?
Both.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, Councillor Gallagher?
Just, appreciate the theatres report. Okay, first question on page 178. In terms of, at the moment, it's anticipated that we, as the City Council, would be up for the 13 million. Is that correct?
Not necessarily. We are suggesting that is what we have to consider is going to be a cost of doing the work. What we haven't assessed and haven't been able to assess at this stage, hence the revised recommendation, is how we secure that funding and what other sources there are from that. So by giving us a year to do that, that'll give us a chance when we come back to you with a business case to have a much more robust and clear view on whether alternative funding streams are open to us. We need to do that work to understand.
So what do you mean? Can you just give example?
Well, it could be through central government grants for the arts and so forth that come through. There are various philanthropic enterprises and so forth that might be interested to support this, support upgrade work and so forth, and that's part of what we have to come back with any business case.
Right, and acknowledge the work of Councillor Forsyth's committee. Is it a Mr. Reid lives in Hinapuri? Will he be paying any of this out of his rates?
I'm assuming not at this
well,
stage.
Well, you see, this to me is the issue, because if you look on page 178, percentage of customers based on postcode, EFTPOS cards, 41% Hamilton, 37 Waikato, excluding Hamilton. So basically what that's sort of roughly saying is potentially half sort of kind of come from Hamilton, sort of, say 55%, but probably 45% actually come, probably in many cases, just outside our boundaries. And this is the real issue which we'll talk at another time.
That's correct.
Right, another time, because here's the news. If you live within a boundary, you are going to basically pay the bulk of the $16 million. And if you live just outside the boundary, you get it for free in terms of the actual capital cost. And I'm not seeing any will whatsoever, frankly, or serious discussion. I'm not sensing that from our surrounding TAs to actually address an upgrade. So this is the issue. Yes, it's an existing facility, but this is an upgrade of an existing facility. It seems to me
So councillor Gallagher, it's a
Yep.
good speech and a good topic.
Right, okay, I realise. The question is, how vigorously are you pursuing the other TAs in terms of so-called regional facilities funding?
I have not directly gone down that track myself. However, I do believe that it will be something for this council to broach in a broader sense. It's a bigger picture than just one facility because it's a much, much bigger picture.
Okay, I have obviously an open mind. Second question, have an open mind, gets back to Councillor Mallett's interesting point where he said, you know, TAs, an individual territorial authority, can't necessarily provide everything, and it's relativity. You know, up the road we have...
So, question?
The question is simply this, with respect, if I can finish, we're on the edges of a city of 1.5 million. There's stuff that they can do that a city of with a ratepayer base of only 145,000, that's it, 145,000 ratepayer base, can't do compared with a city of a ratepayer base of 1.5 million, right? So it's kind of the AOTS Centre and all of the stuff up there versus the founders. So what I'm trying to seek in terms of your report, and I have an open mind, is the shows that if we didn't proceed with this or can't proceed with this in terms of the timescale, what type of shows do we actually lose, because then it comes to a kind of a public subsidy and funding subsidy per show of what we lose. So, and I recognise that Arts Waikato made the point really good about, you know, theatre versus town hall, and I'm just trying to get that.
So the question is, what sort of shows might we be at risk of losing if we didn't proceed with your recommended
Look, there's a wide range of shows. As I said earlier, there are those shows that require heavy lifting above the stage area. So in more recent time, if you look at Phantom of the Opera, that is a show that would not take place here in Hamilton as a result. And I'll just use that as one example. There's a multitude of other examples. I've had a list prepared of all the shows that have been at Founders over the last 4 years, and which ones of those we will no longer be able to accommodate. It's quite a big list, and as I say, it varies according to their staging requirements. We have some shows that don't come to us now already because we're on a restricted lift. But the question that you put is actually well put, and it is, in my mind, if I may, the fundamental question for this council to answer is whether it wants to fund this sort of a facility to that extent so that shows can be rerun in the city, as opposed to not. And to be clear, from 2016 onwards, that will be put to the test as we start to turn down some of those shows coming to the city and how the city responds to that.
So General Manager, so as I understood, that is the purpose of you saying a detailed business case, because that is
Correct.
exactly what you want to bring forward to us, that depth of analysis, because it's sort of crunch time, so to speak. Whereas the work you've done to date has identified issues but not got to the heart of what we need to decide here,
That's
which
the
is the
fundamental
cost-benefit analysis. You're
Correct.
quite right. Okay.
You see,
Councillor Gallagher, a follow-up question?
Yeah, but the follow-up question, and I think most staff have gone, it is a question.
Good.
When Claudelands was built, without any apparent acknowledgement of the fact that the Mystery Creek Field Days, there was an equivalent type of facility whatsoever, you know, in the Greater Hamilton area, were these questions addressed?
Look, I was not present
No.
when that, I'm sorry, I couldn't answer that.
So just so I'm clear, the shows that we miss out, the Claudelands is not an option. These are the shows for which Claudelands or Mystery, you know, Creek are not an option whatsoever. Is that right?
That is correct, although it's fair to say that there are some shows that have performed, that have gone extremely well, and we have redirected them into Claudelands where we can, but not the theatrical performance.
So that's, we've got to be, with respect, we have to be crystal clear, Mystery Creek / Claudelands, whatever, okay, you see the point I make, is not an option at all. Then we actually zero down. And I think then what I'd want in the report, obviously, which I know you'll do, is just remind us of the stuff we will still get, you know. And I'm not saying you never spend money on it, but if there is a 2 or 3 year lag of time, then we narrow down of what we're missing out on, because basically then it becomes, and it's a question I'll put to Arts Waikato respectfully, you know. And then the second question is the impact on operating and others, you know, local performers.
Okay, councillor Mallett, I've got you next on the list, then councillor Pascoe, then the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Sean, just putting the estimated cost, and this is kind of triggering off what Margaret was talking about. Point 1 and point 2 in the summary on page 177 is 10.8 million and then 3 million. That's that's the best part of 14 million. 10 years ago, we built Waikato Stadium for $30 million. So for half the price, we get a fly tower and a stage house structure, and something the scale of things seem to just be way off skew to me.
Look, yeah, I take your point. Now, let me give you some numbers.
The stadium holds 28,000 people.
Yeah, correct. But you're right. But what would it cost? I guess the question I have is, what would it cost to build Waikato Stadium today? And certainly, if we look at some of the costs we're reading about in the newspapers for a new stadium in Christchurch or elsewhere, 35,000 now, in hindsight, was probably a steal, because in today's world, the costs are so much higher. A theatre similar to Founders was rebuilt in Christchurch and reopened just recently. I think that was $45 to $48 million. Now, yes, that was a rebuild of the theatre and so forth, but these things do come at a high cost.
That was a full theatre, was it? So that's demolition costs?
No.
Well, no, that was just a rebuild from ground up, basically.
It was an earthquake as a result.
Yeah, we rebuilt from ground up, which is a whole new thing,
Which I understand.
Right, so, any other questions, councillor Mallett?
No, that's good for me.
Is that a follow-up question
Yes.
to his question?
I understand that theatre was strongly recommended it would be completely demolished, and that council overrode that and said they wanted it fixed up, didn't they? It wasn't a normal situation. It was...
I don't think we know enough detail, but you might be right,
so
councillor.
I'm not sure. Look, we have had people, we have spoken to a number of people about this and experts and so forth. And one of the challenges we have, which is we all have, is that people will talk to you about, look, it's not fit for purpose anymore, it's not part of today's world, build a whole new one, you know. But it's not that easy because of the costs and the money and so forth. And you've got to weigh up what can you do with what you have. And I guess what we're proposing here is this is roughly what we think we can do with what we have, as opposed to a rebuild. The consultants that we worked with, one of them, or two of them I should say in particular, were really struggling that we were trying to ask them to provide cost estimates on replacing exactly what we have now and not cost estimates based on what the industry norm is for proscenium arch theatres in this country and Australia. So we are working on the basis of what we have now. We're not talking about making a bigger Founders. We're not talking about, we're certainly talking about some enhancements to make the most of the opportunity if you're spending the money anyway. But we are saying it is what it is and get it right for what it is, if that's what we choose to do.
Councillor Pascoe, I've got you next.
Yeah, thank you. Sean, you might have already answered part of my question, but I notice it's in two parts, Founders Theatre upgrade and refurbishment. Have we, in our costings to date, separated the two out?
Yes.
As to what the cost would be for the refurbishing the existing theatre, which presumably would be funded from depreciation, as opposed to the cost of the upgrade portion of the 13 point something million, which would be an enhancement to what is already there.
Yeah. So the 10.8 million that we talk about is for those areas over the stage that we believe need to be both made safe and upgraded in today's standard. The 3 million that is the second point in the summary, that is the refurbishment of the public areas, the putting in the new upholstery and giving it a paint job and a tart-up. Basically, that's what we're talking about. So that's why it's in two sections, so you understand the area that we believe, which is the chunk of it, which is if you are going to continue to supply a proscenium arch theatre at the standard and scale that it is now, this has to be done. And if you're going to do that, then there's also, should you take the opportunity at the same time to fix some of the public areas and so forth.
Yeah, but the fly tower, is there what I was getting at, is there a difference in pricing between the enhanced fly tower and replacing the fly tower that's currently there without a rebuild of the house?
We are, and that's That's what we need to do the further investigation
So-
on. As I said
okay,
before,
so
the
that-
cost includes rebuilding the stage house itself, which holds the fly tower, and a new fly tower. So what we are, the cost that we've got indicated now, so what we are saying, we need to really test that more rigorously, the whole strength issue of that stage house in terms of what it can hold. There is no fly tower system that you can go and buy off the rack that will fit inside our existing stage house. It's 50 years old and so forth. And if you were to build a fly tower system itself to insert within our existing stage house, it would be tailor-made, it would be bespoke construction. And once again, we have had difficulty getting that costing from people because they can't understand why we would do that.
So the purpose of the business case is to
Yeah.
analyse in far more detail the options and the benefits that flow from
Yeah.
the expenditure, which I
Correct.
think is pretty
Correct.
critical here, picking
Yeah.
up your points about shows that may or may not come here. Right, okay, so I think we're clear on that. So, I've
Sorry,
got-
would the business case then go into the detail as to what a cost-benefit analysis would be of perhaps getting the Vienna Boys Choir or the
They already come.
or the ballet who can swing the dancers around a bit further
Look, we can...
than it would be on a smaller stage that we
Yeah, look, we can do that for you. But can I be clear right now, without doing those numbers, it won't have a commercial compelling case. There won't be a spend this money and you will get your money back. That's not going to happen with no matter what we do, no matter how we slice or dice it. It is still going to cost this council significant money for that public amenity if it chooses to want it. I am not going to come to this table with a proposal and a business case that says, hey, you're going to get your money back and we'll get, and so forth. That's not going to happen. It defies actual logic without even doing the numbers.
So Deputy Mayor, I've got you next. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Your Worship. Just two questions. Would the Founders refurbishment, and help me understand this, currently there's only cold water in the toilets. Would that mean that the refurbishment would provide hot water?
Yeah, look, that's a part of it, yes.
Okay, thank you. The second question is that have you or your staff done any work on investigating a $3 or $5 facilities fee on all tickets sold for Claudelands, Founders, Seddon Park, Waikato Stadium, and would this partially address Councillor Gallagher's concerns over 45 or whatever the percentage is of those living outside the city using facilities, certainly paying for the ticket, but using facilities they never contributed to?
That's a very good question, Councillor Chessman. No, we have not as it relates to Founders. We have actually looked into that as it relates to other venues. However, because of the nature of the users of those venues, the clients that use them, the contracts that are in place, it's very difficult for us to impose a fee over and above their ticket structures. But it is something that is on our agenda to see if there's a way and what can be done.
So would it be true, I mean, in terms of the ease of it, simply the ticket seller, Ticket Tech, would take the credit card details and the purchaser would be told that there's a $3 or $5 facilities fee to cover whatever it's going to cover?
Mechanically, yes, from a mechanical point of view, but from a commercial agreement and arrangement point of view, it will be a little bit more
So
challenging.
you can look at that as
Yes,
part of this, right?
yes.
Okay. Now, Councillor Pussett, do you have another
Yes,
question?
sorry.
Yeah, okay.
Look, thank you for that explanation too, Sean, about facilities and payback or not. Is there a fly tower at Claudelands?
No. The Claudelands structure has an ability to hold significant weight, and it does for a lot of the shows that are coming up here, but it does not have, they are, the events that take place at Claudelands are really geared up in the arena for large-scale shows, large-scale audiences, and so forth. They're not geared up for shows that come in with smaller audience composition and and with you know, and the cost of putting the proscenium arch type arrangement up with you know, with drops and everything else that's required is actually too expensive for those shows to build and construct on a per show basis. That's why they go to a proscenium arch theatre. So Claudelands isn't really geared up for that sort of an event at all, and it's too big. But it can carry weight, without a doubt. But the cost of putting in framing, putting in all, basically putting in a fly tower in its own right would be huge. As well as creating staging and everything.
Basis.
Absolutely.
So do it on a case-by-case basis.
So if it's a commercial show that's going to come in and we're going to have Ricky Martin with 4,000 people or 5,000 people, that can do it. If you're going to have Phantom of the Opera that might max out at 1,000 people for a limited number of shows, it's not affordable.
So this, I mean, $10 million is an eye-wateringly large amount for a stage and a fly tower. So there is no other facility or availability in the city for a fly tower, is that correct?
Not of that scale. Not of that scale.
Thanks.
Councillor King?
Yeah, I get the feeling that this whole thing is driven by the fly tower.
Yes, it is.
And you said earlier that the structural report on the stage house still hasn't been completed and that it's possible that it will be able to carry the weight once we get that report done.
Well, we have had advisors look at the stage house and they have expressed doubts to us about its carrying capacity. But as I said earlier on, I have not spent the money until I've had a sense of the appetite of this council that it even wants to consider the upgrade work, because it will be some substantial costs required to do those engineering reports and so forth. But we have had observations given to us by consultants we have discussed the fly tower with, that they have some concerns about its ability to actually hold the weights that are required. Bearing in mind it is not just the weight of the fly tower, it's the weight of all the stuff that the client brings in, or the show or the promoter brings in, for the fly tower to carry and to hold. And so they have begged that question with us, but we need more robust evidence of that assessment.
So shouldn't we be setting aside $100,000 at these talks to get an engineering report done so we know where we're going, rather than $10.8 million?
Well, I think that's the nature of the proposal that's been put forward to you. So what the proposal is about is giving us a year over in the 15-16 year to do that assessment, do the business case report and so forth, bring it back to council for you then to consider where to next. The proposal does, however, provide for that roughly $14 million to be tagged in the 21-22 year in the LTP.
Just to clarify that, the $100,000 is a capital amount for the business case, and then the remaining amount is effectively being reserved in the outer years of the annual plan, in the 10-year plan, until such time as that business case can be considered. If the business case is substantially less, then council may be willing to do that. If it's found to be substantially more, then council may not. But it's reserving a lump of money so that we have that option in the 10-year plan without having to go back with an amendment.
Yes, but by reserving that lump of money, we're taking away from another project, and we actually don't know yet where we are. And surely we get the report done over the next 12 months. When we're sitting here in 12 months' time, we actually have some accurate reports, so we know what we've got to spend. At the moment, we're being asked to set a huge amount of money aside. It's only about a fly tower. You're saying you're happy with the size, you're happy with the facility, you just want the fly tower sorted out so we can keep the shows coming.
That's the driver. That's the driver of the issue.
But we don't know yet what that's going to cost. We've got no idea, and we need the report before we make the decision, surely.
We have the estimates, we have the ballpark, so you understand the scope and the scale of what we're talking about.
So the numbers you've got in the report are the estimates about what it will cost to do this work?
Correct.
So that's known?
Yeah.
But the more detailed of exactly what that will be and whether in fact it is that much?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Correct.
So surely if you had an earthquake-prone building, you get your engineering reports done and you set your budget and come to us with that.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting.
I'm just saying we can set this budget in 12 months' time. We don't have to set it now. We don't know the amount, and it could hugely vary.
I think that's a question really for the CFO to respond in terms of how you manage the LTP.
It would still be my recommendation to reserve some funding in the outer years for this, similar to what we do where we've got unknowns like water renewals, percentages on revenue and things like that. So we do have a capital program. We have got some estimates here. This is, if you like, the proposal in front of us is that first tier of business case that you see in the Better Business Case Guidelines where you go through multiple stages. This is the very first round of those estimates. Stage 2 would be a full business case, which is giving you much more certainty around those dollars. But it would be prudent to actually reserve that money, pending that.
What my point is that we don't know yet if the stage house can take the weight or not, and that hugely will change the project.
Look, you are absolutely right, and that's what we want to test. We have a very strong suspicion, based on the advice we've received, that it won't hold it. But we've got to test that to your satisfaction, so that advice or that assumption is correct. But at this stage, I can't guarantee that, but I have a strong suspicion based on what we've been advised up until this point that will become an issue, but it has to be tested properly. If I could also add, Your Worship, just on the comment Councillor King you made about the seismic thing, we're not suggesting the stage houses are seismically unstable. We're just suggesting that it does not have sufficient strength to hold the weights that it's asked to carry.
Can I just add another point in terms of the context from a local legislation point of view? We're expected to, as part of the preparation of our 10-year plan, reflect the information as supported by an asset management plan. Our asset management plans, in the case of Founders, has highlighted the concerns that a significant amount of money does need to be spent, and it will be the expectation of the auditors that we've responded to that based on the information appropriately. And we believe a suitable response to that is to put in $100,000 together for their information as a business case, and also flag that based on the estimates we do have and certain mitigations that we can still, that we reserve, as the CFO referred to it, a portion of cash to meet some of those obligations at the tail end of the 10-year plan period.
Just a couple more questions. You're talking about the 10.8 million being from the curtain back, but I see in page 181 at the top, you're talking about refurbishing the foyer toilets and that 10.8. Which to me is...
Yeah, no, maybe that may be, well be a typo that should be down in the recommended works area.
And the dressing room and access alterations to accommodate expanded stage house, I understood we were doing it under the same footprint.
Yes, look, what that is about is if the stage house has to be removed and we have to build a brand new stage house, then it makes sense to just move it out a matter of metres when you build a new one, which will then give us a lot of added advantage in terms of increased capacity and use and so forth. At that time, why build something you're going to spend a significant amount of money putting a new stage house in and still be constrained when you can easily just move it out a little bit, and that requires a little bit of adjustment behind the scenes. So one of our biggest challenges we have, if any of you got to go behind the scenes at Phantom of the Opera, is staff that were moving the equipment, they all had raw knuckles because it is so tight, that current stage house. So all we're saying is if it has to be rebuilt, why not just move it out that little bit so there's a bit of extra space, and that's the sort of adjustment that would be required in the spaces.
In corporate hospitality, is that really required?
We do have a number of clients who want to do corporate hospitality. There's events that happen there from time to time that ask for it. Some of you may have seen, we have marquees that are put up outside, once again from time to time for certain clients who want to do corporate hospitality. So yes, it is a request that we quite often have to decline.
Thank you.
Oh, Your Worship. Yeah.
Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Look, Your Worship, it was a question to Councillor King. I just wanted to check his thinking is you're thinking that spending 10 or 13 million, that we should be thinking about a new facility instead of losing that money in a facility that's 50 years old.
Personally, from what I can see, it's about the fly tower to keep these productions coming to Hamilton. And we don't know whether the structure that holds the fly tower is strong enough yet. And until we get that report, we have no idea what the spend is. And we're being asked to set aside 10.8 million minimum just for that, when we actually don't know whether that structure is good enough. And when we get that report, it's, as Sean has indicated, the roof and ceiling at Clauden's could well be strong enough to take a fly tower. And Sean's also alluded to a curtaining off part of the founders to make it a smaller facility. Possibly that curtaining could be used at Clauden's to make that a smaller facility to accommodate those things, and this becomes more of a town hall. I'm not suggesting we shouldn't be having a fly tower somewhere
He's not
in the city.
suggesting building another theatre, no.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, did you want to correct something?
Look, just on a couple of comments from Councillor King, I'm not suggesting that you can put a proscenium arch theatre viably inside Claudelands at all. I'm suggesting it's actually very difficult to do that. The sheer scale is too huge, and you can't, the curtaining that you would put in the dimensions of Founders Theatre, or the screening I should say, won't fit the sort of dimensions in Claudelands, because it's just a totally different building and a totally different construct. So I don't believe you can look at Claudelands as an alternative to Founders for theatrical performance activity. There's just not, there's just too big a difference in the venues, and that's the sheer scale.
Right, any other questions? Yes, Councillor Gillard?
You'll test that, won't you?
Yes,
You know, I mean,
well, we have.
So give us the evidence, because I mean, this is the tragedy, the absolute tragedy of the Claudelands project.
Right,
You know, in terms of opportunity cost and opportunity lost. But Councillor King, actually, it's not. I think it's a relevant clarification. You know, in terms of town hall, of Founders, potentially more focused town hall type. Still lots of relevant performances, but just getting the margin, because what we're focusing on with Phantom of the Opera and that kind of thing is what is going to be the per performance public subsidy, only from the people of Hamilton, of course, nowhere else, for each of those performances. Not against it, but as long as we've teased all of that and put beyond doubt that that's not an option that's been suggested.
Fully understood.
Councillor Mallett, did you have a question?
Just, Sean, just want to make sure there's not a double up. On page 177, you 1, 2, 3, 4. Fifth point down is a provision of 150k for the dressing rooms. You go to 181, and the second point down is dressing rooms and access alterations, which is included in the 10.8. Is that a double up?
No, there's no double ups.
So the 150k is on top of.
Yeah.
What's the difference? So
that's work that is programmed already in the LTP.
What is the 150?
The theatres, yeah. I think from memory. Yeah.
So you're doing two lots.
It is separate, but obviously, if a master program was pursued, we would revisit all that.
Oh, okay. Okay, so it's not the same project put in there twice.
No.
Okay.
Right, any other question? No? Okay, we've got a recommendation from staff on the A3 sheet. On page 13. I'm going to move that recommendation. Seconder on that? Yeah. The Deputy Mayor's seconding it. Okay, so I'm going to speak to it. We've been through a process of asset management plans over the last couple of years, and the reason we did that was so that we understood the whole of life cost of the assets we already have. And those asset management plans have more accurately told us what we need to do and when we need to do it in the assets we own. And it identifies that Founders Theatre needs some major investment if it is to remain a theatre and be used in the way that it has been used for 50 years. I guess one of the sad aspects of the discussion today is that we are talking about a fly tower that that was built 50 years ago when the theatre was built. And if they had had accurate asset management plans since then, I guess we wouldn't be having this discussion because it would have long ago been dealt with in an appropriate way to maintain an asset in the appropriate manner for its whole of life. So here we are today talking about catch-up, because essentially this is what this is. Catch-up. We're at the cliff face now. A couple of years' time, we're falling over it. Because here's another significant asset in the city that needs urgent attention within a couple of years. If we wish to keep that facility in the city used the way it currently is. This is there's been some discussion in the questions about, whether you allocate money in an estimate situation. And I just want to speak briefly to that. That is what we do when we come to water infrastructure, transporting, all of these things. That's exactly what we do in this 10-year window. Because we know that we have to have an intervention at a certain time. And we know in general terms what the investment is likely to be. But as we get closer to the date when it comes forward to the council to approve the contract or the project good to go, in that year that we have allocated for it, that is when the pencil has been sharpened and the intricate detail is known. So it is entirely appropriate that we allocate an estimate budget in this 10-year plan, hence the inclusion in that second paragraph. Absolutely appropriate. The third point I want to raise is a business case. It is absolutely essential that we do a detailed analysis of this project for lots of reasons. And for me, the most important aspect of that is the cost-benefit analysis. Now, I'm not talking about, we're suddenly going to get a return in money terms on our investment. This is a public asset with a proportion of public good in it. And that is why local authorities do these things. But that detailed analysis will assess for us the extent to which we do this fly tower, what size, and what is the return for that in terms of shows, additional shows and patronage. And that's an important aspect, because if you look at page 179, in some respects that's a grim story as well, isn't it? An asset that was built by the donations of the public 50 years ago. It was funded by the public. And now we have a declining patronage, and it's a sad place sometimes, with cold water in the toilets. Good God, what century are we in? Cold water in the toilets. God. Seats that, I don't know, I go there frequently. Some of our maturer people struggle to last the show in those seats, I have to say. And there's declining patronage. So I want to see what this investment will deliver in terms of that. And the other important factor for us is the ability to generate additional revenue to offset operating costs, which is how we have been approaching a number of our facilities over the last couple of years. So that is why it's very important to support number one, more detail. I think that we've done a very good job of implementing the theatres report as a council. We got the expert who had no knowledge of any of the players, excuse the pun, in the Hamilton creative community, who came to our city and did a very good theatres analysis about our facilities. And we have started implementing that with the Meteor, with Riverlea, and with Clarence Street. And it is my view that the council should maintain and provide a premier theatre, the Founders Theatre, to our community, and maintain it to the standard that it is expected to deliver the programs that our community expects and that as a good city we should provide. So I think this is a good recommendation. I'm pleased that you have revised it, and I would strongly encourage councillors to support this, and then let's get into the nitty-gritty debate when we get the detailed business case back.
Could I put an amendment in?
Yes, you
I
can
move an
share.
amendment.
Yes, what would your amendment be?
Bullet point 1 and bullet point 3 without bullet point 2,
Okay, and seconded by councillor
page
Mallett.
13.
So the amendment, councillors, is just not allowing some provision in the budget for the actual estimated cost. Okay, councillor Gallagher, I've got you as the next speaker.
Yes, I think you've made a good, reasonably good case, and I think the critical thing, as far as we're concerned at the point, is the spend of the $100,000 now, and in my view, everything else then is on the table once we've received that report. I think that the willingness of a region to make a contribution, a significant contribution to a regional theatre upgrade fund, will give the truth or the absolute lie to these regional funding proposals, in my view. And I think there's absolutely legitimate that technically, we'll only fund new, get funding for upgrade of existing stuff, where if in fact it is a more economic and realistic function to actually take an existing structure and add to it and upgrade it, that's still going to be cheaper than building something, you know, from a zero position. I'll obviously be listening very closely to Arts by Care and others when they speak to the draft LTP. I think I'm at this stage tentatively inclined. I'm a little bit unsure about the 13.8 provided 2021-22 until we've got that plan back. But I come back to the other thing, is I do think we as a city should actually start dropping the diplomacy and the nice talk. And we as a city should say, how come in Auckland you have the Aotea Centre and those facilities, and all of Auckland pays for it, all of Auckland region, right from just south of Warkworth, right down to just north of Tuakau and Pokeno, they all pay for it. And yet in the Waikato, even in the central Waikato, out of this region, only a third or 40% of the ratepayers end up paying for it. And I think that's a crunchy discussion we need to have, and I think we need to drop the diplomacy. I think we need to put this stuff on the table, quite frankly, because I think it is becoming increasingly unsustainable and unpalatable that this funding arrangement should continue. We certainly must do that initial report to, I guess, just to give the final detail and if you like, and acknowledge building on the good work that the Theatres Review did.
Right. Any other speakers for or against? Yes, councillor Mallett.
I speak in favour of the amendment. What we're doing today already, we have extended our voted to breach our financial strategy and change it, pushing our debt target out 2 years. What we're starting to do now is starting to breach the decision we just made half an hour or an hour ago. Every time we move one of these unfunded projects into funded, we'll simply kick the can down the road, and we will keep on going ahead of our 200%. And it will happen, Paul. Don't you worry, mate.
Just to clarify, though, this recommendation is assuming that the 200% target from 2021, therefore, and then we've tested that to see the 13.8 actually fits in 2022. So that option is available.
It fits.
It used up some of the limit that is there, but it is.
And that's based on the assumption that nothing else will get added, that everything will stay the same, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah. And you think that'll happen?
Sorry. Okay. Thank you, councillor Mallett. Did you have a question?
I'm just going to make a point that's highly likely that should the amendment go through and we don't reference the $13.8 million in our 10-year plan, given that we're aware of the issue and given that we have at least done some work to identify what the costs are, and asset management plans are suggesting there is some deficiencies in our current asset, that Audit New Zealand will comment on its exclusion. And it's also important from a community consultation point of view, whether we include it or not, we will have to reference the nature of founder theatres as a major matter within our consultation document as well.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just comment on that?
Yep.
we're not saying no. I just want to comment.
Sorry,
I'm not
Councillor
speaking to
King, we're
Sorry.
getting to you in terms of the CEO just said that he wanted to clarify to make sure that councillors were clear about our responsibility with asset management plans. You get you'll get your chance when I come to you. I've got councillor.
I'm not speaking to the motion. I'm
speaking to me.
Speaking to what Richard just said.
Is it a question you have for him of clarification? Because if it's to restate your view on your amendment, you can deal with that when you speak.
Richard the CEO has suggested that Audit New Zealand is going to pull us up for not spending the money, not allocating the money in 2022, putting us under pressure to make a decision now. I'd strongly disagree with that. The amendment up there says when we get a completed business case, which we haven't got, and this is about just the fly tower going in or a whole new front end to that building, it's huge cost differences. And for us to be voting under the threat of what Audit New Zealand may say, I don't think they can say anything. We have said that we're asking for a completed business case report.
And like I said, I'm likely to comment. I wasn't making it as a threat. I was giving context behind this. And bearing in mind, in terms of support of your argument, we go out for audit comment on the 25th of February. They bring it back with their commentary, and we have the choice at that time to make changes. But I'm just making that clear that it'll be one of the focus points. And that's all I was putting on the table.
All right. Now, I've got just Councillor Mallet, you've spoken. I've got Councillor McPherson as the next person to speak. I've got that. Yeah. Right. Thank you.
Your Worship. I support the amendment. I support the amendment, but would also like to comment on the CEO's contribution to the debate just before. I think he's quite right in suggesting that Audit New Zealand will comment, but I think there are more ways to handle it than putting it in as an actual expenditure item. For instance, if it's in the unfunded section of the LTP, then it's an identified item, and you can put quite a few words around that to show that there's yet to be a decision made about whether it comes across into funded, when it comes across, because it's dependent on the business case and then council's decisions following seeing the business case. In fact, I think there's a greater argument to have it sit there at this point than it is to have it in there, because to put it in there assumes an outcome from the business case which we haven't done yet. So I also think, and I listened to Councillor Gallagher's arguments before about the contributions that may or may not be sought, I believe, from surrounding councils or elsewhere. I believe that to include 13.8 million, i.e. 100% of the estimated cost to come from this council in that year is going to relax the pressure on the surrounding councils. They're going to see that we're making that contribution, that we're covering the cost. Why would we need to seek extra funding from them? I think that part of the business case that's being explored, where the options are being explored, ought to, and I'm hoping it does, include funding options, not just the cost options. So if that does, why would we put it all in our budget when it's quite likely that at least a component of that will come from somewhere else? Let's do the business case and then decide which parts fall where.
Right. Any other speakers for or against? No? I might just make a quick right of reply, given I moved the motion. 2 points I want to address. First of all, I agree with Councillor Gallagher about the debate about the regional discussion, because the reality is that the city does provide almost all, not all, but almost all of the major facilities that service the region. And that's a good thing. But I think the day has come when we do need to have those discussions, and the General Manager made a point that, there's a lot more than just Founders Theatre where those discussions need to be had. It is time for us to get our heads around what is the funding mechanism that enables everyone to enjoy these facilities to the state they should be in, but contribute in some ways, and the rating mechanism is clearly not that way. And this is off the back, of course, of the report released yesterday into the funding of infrastructure across New Zealand, which is a very useful discussion document put out by Local Government New Zealand. The second thing I want to say is in respect of our commitment as a council to follow the requirements of our asset management plans. And for me, this motion is about making a commitment to, number one, follow asset management plans, because we need to make an investment in an asset and maintain it. And secondly, it is a commitment to Founders Theatre. And I know enough about auditors to know that they are looking to see that as councillors we are aware of the issues in the facilities we manage, and that we have a plan in our budget to deal with those. And that is why I am moving the motion to allocate some funding, because it represents a commitment and a response to an asset management plan identified issue. So we're now going to vote on the amendment first, which is the one on the bottom.
Oh.
Is that casting vote?
Who came over?
Yes, I've exercised that. So we're now going to vote on the motion.
The amendment is lost.
Yes, we're now going to vote on the motion. Can you just move it up so we can see the motion, please?
I'll raise it, put a process afterwards, sorry, you wish, I'll wait.
Is there a process about what we're doing right now?
Not to do with this vote.
No, okay. Right. So we're voting on the motion. Right.
Carried, 7 votes for, 5 against.
Do you want to raise your process,
Just in
Matt?
relation to the how the casting vote throws up on the screen here.
Yes.
Surely IT people could
Apparently.
jig the program so that you have the option, or any chair has the option of making a choice rather than being automatic.
Yes, I forget how many times I've asked about that.
Yeah.
So let's ask it again.
Yeah.
Shall we,
I think it puts
collectively, as a
everyone in
group?
difficult position, including yourself.
But anyway, can't you can just override that, can't you? You can say,
I can
look,
say I'm not.
yeah,
going
yeah,
to.
I'm going to make a note of Councillor McPherson to follow that person.
Good, so that'll be, I don't know, the 100th time. Let's be exaggerated, but you know.
I'll stand up here in front of them.
It's probably on Barry's to-do list as
So
well.
we're going to adjourn for lunch. Did you have a question, councillor?
Yes, to do with the casting votes. There is a report, there is possibly, and you could misunderstand what the meeting procedures says about the casting votes, and this has happened in the past, and the way I read it is that the meeting must come to a decision, and the casting vote is used to ensure that we come to a decision. There is a legal opinion on that from Tompkins Waite from several years ago, and stating that the chair, that their opinion is that the chair can choose or not to choose to use it. They recommended that that needed addressing, and that this council should be looking at clarifying exactly how it is. And at that stage, several years ago, it was just dropped at that stage and nothing was done about it. And I think that that needs to be readdressed so that it's clear as to what the legal opinion is. I think that you could go to another set of lawyers and get another legal opinion reading another way quite easily.
Just, can I...
All right, so thank you. Look, it's a good process, a procedure issue. Democracy Manager, can you, because I'm sure none of the councillors are aware of that.
Councillor King and I had quite a lengthy discussion about this matter, and I've
myself.
Yeah, a legal view was provided some years ago on council standing orders, which are based on the New Zealand standards, and at that time the interpretation was it was up to the chair whether they exercise that casting vote. That was, but our standing orders could be clarified. That was what Tompkins Waite recommended several years ago.
So within, question, I mean, the critical thing is, you know, within the Local Government Act, it's crystal clear or not, that
Yes,
the
it's
chair
very
can
clear
exercise a discretion whether or not.
Yes,
Yep,
yes.
that's fine.
Yeah, very clear, but our standing orders could clarify that with a footnote.
And the minutes clearly will record when
Really
it,
helpful
just
for me
further
to
question,
know
obviously the minutes
the
clearly
first blush.
record.
Thanks very much for letting me know that right now.
Yeah, a point of
So
question.
we're going to adjourn for lunch.
I had a question, it's relative to local, so the minutes clearly record within the Local Government Act when a casting vote in whatever situation is exercised. Is that's obviously correct? So it will clearly show, it just makes point casting vote then placed, because in other words, what I'm saying is you have a list of those who voted for, a list of those who voted against, right, and it's even numbers, and then presumably there'll be a line and say that the chair of the meeting then exercised his or her casting vote.
Yes.
Right, cool.
Okay, so we're adjourning for lunch, and are we okay to come back at 1:30? Yes? Okay, 1:30.